Airing on Asheville FM 103.3 LPFM in Asheville, this is The Final Straw Radio, a weekly anarchist and anti-authoritarian broadcasts and podcast emanating out of occupied Chalagi land in southern Appalachia. We bring you voices and perspectives from projects and struggles all around the world, and you can find our archives, transcripts, ways to follow us and support us at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org. This week we're featuring an interview with Shannon, one half of the mutual aid project operated in Washington, D.C., known as Remora House. For the hour, we talk about Remora House, how houseless and non-citizen communities have been impacted by the Trump administration's crackdown and sending in of troops to D.C., and some ideas about strengthening the resistance as federal police agencies and National Guard are deployed into our neighborhoods to break up our communities and our resolve. You can learn more about Remora House at their link tree, linktr.ee/Remora House DC. Then you'll hear Parias of Athens from the June 2025 episode of Bad News Podcast. It's a chat with participants in the project called Research Critic about the distraction of the Greek public from media coverage of the deadly Tempe train disaster by a heavy dose of culture war discourse about lawlessness on university campuses and social decay. The rail accident was caused by negligence and understaffing under the neoliberal New Democracy regime, killing 57 people and injuring nearly 200. And it led to heated demonstrations for more than a year around the country and internationally. In a brief update to last week's announcement of Casey Goonan's solidarity strike with Hoxha in the UK of the Filton 24 is joined by the anarchist prisoner we spoke to a few episodes ago, Malik Muhammad, currently held in the Oregon prison system. As of Sunday, September 7th, Hoxha is on her 28th day of hunger strike against the conditions of her confinement. You can read more and find out how to offer support at calla.substack.com/p/international-hunger-strike-grows.
My name's Shannon. My pronouns are she, they. I live in Washington, D.C., and I'm one of the founders and one half of the two-person team that is Remora House.
Cool. And could you tell us a bit about Remora House, how it started, what y'all do, and who you work with?
So Remora House started in March of 2020, as did a lot of mutual aid groups, in response to the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the other half of Remora, my partner, had been working with a particular unhoused community in the Noma neighborhood of Washington, D.C., and so when the pandemic started, we were greatly concerned about them. And at first, we're primarily focused on getting PPE. So mostly we were trying to find hand soap, hand sanitizer, and then we learned masks were important. So I got a sewing machine and started making cloth masks. And then just kind of as we learned more and more about the pandemic and what the response needed to be, adapted from there. And then through building relationships with the people that lived outside, through doing weekly supply distribution, sometimes a little bit more than that, we grew kind of the supplies that we were providing folks as well. So we expanded to getting tents and sleeping bags, camping gear, other supplies that folks can't always access at other service centers. So phone chargers and phone batteries and things along those lines. And just as we got to know folks more and more, could help meet like specific needs. So people got comfortable asking us for things like backpacks for their kids when it was time to go back to school, or money for Halloween costumes for their kids, which we, thought were really important ways to like be connected with folks and let them also have joy in their life and not just, the immediate needs that they had. That's been going for 5 years. We've just kind of grown and changed over the years. We're super relationship focused. So we've pivoted a lot to doing just direct cash support. So on the first of every month, today when we're recording, we send out $150 to 15 people that live in DC and who are either currently experiencing homelessness or are recently housed. And we do other things like eviction prevention support. We help pay off people's utility debt to keep their lights on. And a lot of that is just based on relationships that we've built with folks that have lived outside over the years and with other organizations that work with people that live outside.
That's pretty crazy. That's a lot. That's a lot of work for a team of two. Yeah. I don't. How do you not burn out?
It's a lot, but we fluctuated. Like we've had more folks helping out before, and we were able to do meals every week alongside our supply distribution. It's a lot. We were both grad students when we started. And so hopefully my advisor isn't listening, but our primary work was doing this. And then we would, in the evenings, try and get around to our research and our writing. But yeah, it's a lot, but we have really great supports in the community. We collaborate a lot. So all of the response stuff that we're doing in this moment is in collaboration with other organizations and individuals and comrades who are also, equally dedicated to getting support out to our neighbors.
I'm going to feel a little silly making this commentary, but I hope that maybe it'll spark a response that maybe someone wouldn't have heard or wouldn't think of, right? Because there's a lot of people have varying levels of experience around houselessness or being under threat or being personally houseless. But hearing examples of like some of the support that you offer to folks being like help getting their kids Halloween costumes or helping with back to school supplies. Like I don't know what most people think of when they think of houseless folks or people that are living in a situation where their housing is like unstable, or maybe they're living out of their vehicle. But I think the image that a lot of people have is of a young adult or an older adult, or maybe two, like maybe a couple, but living in that manner and don't necessarily think about kids and don't think about engaging in quote unquote like normal activities. I guess could you comment on that?
Yeah, that's a really helpful question. And it gets into something, right? Like the way that unhoused people are spoken about and portrayed is often incredibly dehumanizing and focuses on their poverty, their suffering, the kind of, extreme circumstances that they're in, and it disconnects them from the family, the community that they have. So, when this occupation was announced via press conference, one of the things that the administration's press secretary kept saying was, we don't know where these people are from. There's people living in the nation's capital streets, and we don't know where they're from. We do know where they're from. They're from Shaw. They're from the neighborhoods here in DC. They still have family here. We had friends that slept in a park that was right next to one of them. Their aunt still lived in those apartments, and he could go over there and like see her and, maybe have a hot meal sometimes when she was able to help. Another guy that slept in that park had grown up in those apartments. People still have strong family and relationships here. The vast majority of people that are living outside in your city are probably from there too, and being displaced by, similar systems of gentrification and development that are pushing people out of their homes here in DC. But, there's people whose kids will come visit them at camp sometimes. Like, these are strong communities, even the camp communities themselves. We have cookouts, we have celebrations, we have memorials when people pass away. It's like a very deeply personal and connected group of people. And then they, still have ties to, their kids that live maybe right up out in Maryland or in Virginia or right down the street. And so they still see them. They'll still go to family events. They just sleep outside at night.
Some people are, quote unquote, like defined by institutions as being chronically homeless. And this might be a definition that people like apply to themselves in their experience as well. But yeah, it feels helpful to think about it kind of in opposition to the presentation that either nonprofit organizations or government institutions, whether they're like the police or politicians or maybe even like care-based support nets or whatever, they kind of like talk about homeless people as like homeless being the primary activating thing, as if it's a permanent status of that individual, as opposed to a state that a person is in at a time that may be one that they experience for a very long time, but it doesn't necessarily define the person or their experience or their worth or whatever else. Instead, it says a lot about the society that is around them and the way that we treat private property or class, or I don't know. Is that touching on something? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I know a lot of people that do primarily identify as homeless as a way to point to kind of the violence of the world and what it has done to them. And I also know people who don't feel that that's like a really strongly defining aspect of their identity. It's a stop along their path. And at the end of the day, they're an artist or a writer or aspiring to be a lawyer. And so I think even the systems that unhoused people touch and getting support and the nonprofit industrial complex can also recreate some of that same kind of dehumanizing rhetoric. And, I don't want to like bash on outreach workers. I think they do incredible work. And I think a lot of them care really, really passionately about the people they're trying to support. But there also might be one person with 70 folks that they're trying to support. So like the system itself creates a sense of people being numbers or products running through a mill instead of like actual human beings who need to be listened to and understood. And like by understanding their connections to their family and their community, they could be better supported if people were given the time to be treated as whole human beings. We could, I think, better respond to people's needs and like better help them. And so that's why when I say, we're really relationship focused, it's the supplies that we hand out, especially we make these like pretty basic hygiene kits. It's like a way to start a conversation. Like, yes, it's meeting a need that someone has, but it's also a way for me to like meet you and start to build trust and start to get to know who you are and what you actually need. Do you need colored pencils? Do you want yarn because you love to crochet? And, meeting those other needs that someone has that aren't just basic survival needs, I think speaks to like the whole humanness of people. And I hope that it has helped people, feel more connected and supported also.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And thanks for responding to those kind of off the cuff questions that I didn't script out. So you mentioned the occupation. How have you seen the Trump administration's deployment of National Guards and the sending of troops from other states impacting your life as a resident of D.C., as well as the work of Remora House and communities in D.C.? And this could be a different question, but does this feel like a shift? Or how is it different from when MPD or whatever of the various law enforcement agencies that operate in the District of Columbia, like how they're interacting with you and the communities you participate in?
Yeah, the impacts, the day-to-day impacts of the occupation are really different depending on who you are and what you look like. So I'm a white woman, so I do not feel the same, I think, like immediate fear and risk of criminalization that a lot of my neighbors and community members do. But I'll just to speak to kind of like what I'm seeing on the ground, every time you leave your house, I live in a less affluent area. I am not of the majority color in my area. And, every time you leave your house, there's a solid chance you're going to see someone being arrested. I was just grabbing one other day, exhausted, and going through a drive-through line. And we have a lot of delivery drivers that ride mopeds and scooters here in DC, and they're predominantly from our migrant community and who are predominantly people that were sent to DC from Texas by Governor Abbott's political stunt starting in, I think, 2022. So we've had a large and growing migrant community here, and a lot of them have turned to delivery work as a means of generating income for themselves. And so just sitting in my car, in my drive-thru with my dog, about to go for a walk, and a delivery driver, still with his helmet on from his moped, came like sprinting past my car, and right behind him were two ICE agents. I have never seen that. That does not happen here. But this was just right over the line in DC. And thankfully, one of the ICE agents absolutely ate on a median in the middle of the road. And so the guy definitely got away safely. Like, I watched the two of them come back, and they thought they were just going to go in and pick up their lunch. And everyone inside the restaurant was just screaming at them. But like, that is so out of the norm. DC is a sanctuary city. We do not cooperate with ICE. There are protections in place for our migrant community that mean they don't have to constantly live in fear of trying to go about their day and an ICE agent just picking them up. So that's a huge shift. Another is, similarly, coming home from work one day and seeing two Border Patrol cars parked in a neighborhood that I knew had a lot of migrant community members in it. And so, I'm just trying to get home from work, and this is what a lot of people in DC are doing right now. I just pulled over and watched and waited. Are they going to try and raid this house? Are they waiting for someone? is this a targeted arrest, or, what's going to happen? And so I spent 15, 20 minutes of my day sitting there watching and waiting for them to leave. They finally did. I followed them for a bit until we got gas and went about my day. But it's constant. It's everywhere now in a way that the DC community has not had to have the same level of constant acute awareness of needing to do Ice Watch. Just the constant presence of it everywhere is really exhausting. People trying to just go out on, regular places that you go out to the bars, U Street. There's just patrols of a group of 14 officers from MPD, FBI, ATF, DEA, you name it, just walking in massive clumps up and down the streets, up and down 14th Street, up and down H Street. It is a show of force to go to heavily populated areas where generally our Black community is out trying to have fun and be out at night. And there's just this massive over display of force and violence everywhere you turn. And that doesn't even mention the National Guard that we now have stationed at most of our metro stops in DC at this point. And then they're also, driving to work, you see them, the National Guard for some reason is putting out mulch at the local park. So just that the visuals of it just being constant everywhere is just exhausting and terrifying. And again, that's for me as someone who is not in a targeted group right now. I mean, I think the city of DC is squarely in the crosshairs, but I'm not facing the same threat of criminalization as a lot of my community members are, and I'm exhausted by it.
Yeah, you've mentioned the increase in people being chased down for racial profiling and based on the neighborhood that they're in, the assumption that they might not have documentation or might not have citizenship. Have you seen corresponding increases with all the law enforcement in the area of sweeps of houseless camps or parks or what have you also?
Yes. So the targeting of our unhoused neighbors was kind of one of the first things that happened. So for context, here in DC, we used to have an encampment engagement protocol, which required a 2 weeks notice if a camp was going to be cleared. This is on city property. So this applies to almost none of our green space. All of our green space is federal. If you are on federal property, there is no protocol in place. You will just be cleared, and you will be cleared by Parks Police, who is brutal, notoriously brutal. Anyone that has lived outside will tell you the Parks Police is brutal. Anyone that has tried to have a spicy protest in DC will tell you Parks Police is brutal. But on city property, there's an encampment protocol. You get 2 weeks notice. And often, and this is before 2020, often camps would be allowed to then be cleared. So they would move all of their items. The city would come in, remove anything left behind, abandoned tents, garbage, whatever. If you're on a sidewalk, they might come power wash it, and then you could move back. As of 2020, that started to drop off. And instead of being allowed to return to their camp, they were permanently evicted from that space. And often then that space was closed off, either with fences or with the camps that Remora House started working with in 2020. There's these massive array of Jersey barriers blocking off a sidewalk to ironically create a pedestrian passageway. So that has largely been dwindling since 2020. So there had already been an escalated attack on unhoused spaces and our unhoused neighbors happening from the city of Washington, D.C. And then when Trump came into office, he, within a couple of months, identified this one camp that was kind of near the White House as saying it needed to get cleared out. It was outside of the State Department, and he posted about it on Truth Social, and within 24 hours, the city cleared it. They still publicly claim that those were unrelated, but that camp was not slated to be cleared. That camp did not get notice they were being cleared, and it was cleared within 24 hours of Trump complaining about it. So then with this announcement of escalation, with the federal police coming in, he similarly took photos of some of the camps that are along his route to the Kennedy Center, which he has developed an obsession with that we can, I don't know, maybe talk about. But so he posted photos of those camps on True Social, and the city came and cleared them. So things have escalated in a trend of already escalating. All that to say, there was already not a ton of encampments in DC. There's this like idea that he's putting out that there's just a camp in every park, there's tents on every sidewalk, and there just really isn't. That's just not the case. There were very few camps to begin with. So those were cleared early by the city. And then some of the kind of like last camp standing that were near-ish the White House. So MPD and for some reason the FBI came on like a Thursday night and threatened to clear them, even though they'd been scheduled to be cleared the following week by the city per the protocol that we supposedly still have. And I think, the presence of community members there that night when they came to clear the camp, again, this is the police. The MPD does not clear encampments in DC. I have never seen that. I don't know anyone that's done on-house support in DC that's ever seen MPD touch anyone's belongings to clear them. They do not do that because we have an encampment protocol and the city does adhere to it, kind of. But this night it was MPD, it was FBI, and they were able to be staved off for the night. I think they were convinced like it's going to be too much trouble for you. They left, but then they came back 9 a.m. the next morning, and it was MPD with FBI, who the public statement is that the FBI was there as security for MPD, as MPD dragged people's tents with absolutely no notice. If they were not there, then their stuff just went into the back of a dump truck, which is generally not, I have a lot of issues with the city. I don't think any of these engagements should happen at all, but they would at least figure out who was there. Are they coming back? Why aren't they here yet? Do they know? Did they decide to abandon this tent? And they'll give people time to pack up and move. This was, we're grabbing your tent. You can grab whatever you can grab from it as fast as you can, and then it's gone. And whatever you didn't get, whether it's your medications, whether it's your ID, your birth certificate, your medical records, your family photos, it's now gone. So that was an extreme escalation in terms of encampment engagements. Like, that does not happen. Even when it is more immediate, even when there isn't notice, it's still a multi-hour process to let people pack, let them talk to their caseworker, try and make sure they're connected, figure out if they're going to put stuff in storage, right? This was a camp of 9 people was cleared in 30 minutes. And then they rolled down the street to another. And that was done in 20 minutes. And then they rolled down the street to another, and that was done in 20 minutes. So that is an escalation unlike anything we have seen. But since then, they've essentially hit all the camps again, because there weren't many to begin with. The other kind of terrifying piece of the targeting of our unhoused neighbors was the threat of escalation of involuntary commitments, or it's called an FD12. I don't know if that's a universal term. That's what we call it here in DC. So a threat of escalation of involuntary commitments, and of, we were getting these like warnings from the city and from Parks Police, who, is the other kind of counterpart that has predominantly dealt with unhoused neighbors in DC, that they were going to start anyone that was sleeping outside, not just in a tent, but if you're sleeping on a bench, if you're sleeping on church steps, you can either go to shelter or you can go to jail. So this is what we were being told in the early days of the occupation, to the level that local hospitals were sent out a notice to prepare for an increase in FD12s. And this extends to hospitals out in Virginia. We're being told, you'll need to prepare your staff for an increase in involuntary commitments of unhoused people. That didn't happen, as far as we know, as far as we've heard, kind of through our network of folks, both more official and less official, in our unhoused neighbors. Like, neither of those things has really been carried through with. And, but it's still, when I see someone out sleeping on a bench, it's, there's still this question, because that threat is still hanging over everyone of, okay, well, is tonight the night that they decide they're going to start this shelter or jail policy? We just don't know. And there's, there used to be this separation of federal and city property. And so we would just always tell people, try and sleep on city property, because you'll get a 2 weeks notice. If you sleep on federal property, there's no protections, and Parks Police will you up. Everyone knows that. And so there used to be this kind of landscape that we could navigate. But now, with a complete federal takeover, where MPD is has been partnered up with different federal units and are just escorting them around the city. There's no separation between federal and city property anymore. So there's no where that's safe or a safer bet to sleep anymore. So that's kind of where we're at now. And the biggest impact is, people are going to ground. And this is what we've been telling them. This is what the nonprofit outreach organizations are telling people is you have to go hide. And so the impact of that is like, yes, they are hopefully somewhere that is not visible, that they're sleeping, that they will be left alone. But what that means is I can't find them. Outreach workers can't find them. Their caseworkers can't find them, right? If they don't have a phone or if they don't have access to a phone charger or somewhere they can go to charge their phone, they have now lost contact with all of their support systems and resources. And so, this is what was already happening with the escalation of encampment evictions, of pushing people out of parks and into more unsafe places, pushing people into highway underpasses, pushing people into on-ramps, literally. One of the big camps that was cleared is on the side of an on-ramp for a highway. So it was already dangerous. It was already hard to keep people connected. And unless it is people that were already able and comfortable for a number of reasons to go seek out services themselves, anyone that doesn't fit that category, who is disabled and not able to get across town to, a place that has showers and dinners, or is queer and doesn't feel comfortable always going into shelter systems, et cetera, et cetera. They have pets, they have partners, they have, whatever reasons why they already weren't going to access services. Now those people, I can't even go out and find where their camp is and try to connect with them where they're at. So yes, the kind of direct targeted attack of unhoused spaces has kind of paused, but the general kind of terror aspect of it remains and is still harming people who now probably aren't getting as much food as they once were, are losing contact with caseworkers and therefore, maybe falling behind or falling out of their housing process, and all of those kind of ripple effects that happen from people just not being able to stay connected to support.
So I've heard on Democracy Now!, who's done more work like looking into the numbers, they've said over and over again that crime rates have declined monstrously in the last few years in DC. So the argument that, like, for instance, when Asheville says that we're going to ramp up our harassment of homeless populations or people that are panhandling or whatever, they like cook the numbers afterwards to justify that, like, there's been an increase in violent crime in this neighborhood and it's attributable to homeless people. Numbers don't pan out, but they try to find a reason. And our society is classist and racist, so it's pretty easy to put it on to people that are the boogeyman in our society in a lot of cases, houseless folks who make people scared that they're going to be in that position or whatever. But like, as I understand, this like increase in policing and beefing up of policing and use of federal, not only like nationalized National Guards, but also employees of these federal level policing agencies or investigative agencies like DEA, Border Patrol, FBI, it's not responding to an increased amount of violent crime, right? Can you talk about the motivations behind this? You mentioned that it's a sanctuary city.
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of conversations about, what is the motivation here? And I don't think that I think there's one big one, and I think there's a lot of others all in this mixing pot of horror. And so, I mean, like you're saying, DC is a very complicated place politically. And so my greatest theory is he's doing it here because he can. So he tried this in LA and it didn't work. But DC, so for some kind of context about our politics and our representation, so we do not have direct representation in Congress. We have shadow representatives that can propose a bill or speak on something. They do not have any actual power. They can't hold any kind of official seats within Congress. They can't vote or anything like that. So we have no congressional representation, but we do have home rule, which we got in 1973. And we then could have a mayor and a city council. But any local laws that are passed have to be approved by Congress, where, again, we don't have any representation. So there has already been this kind of congressional attack on DC and our laws, and especially focusing on laws that protect, support, uplift our migrant neighbors. For example, the law we passed to allow non-citizens to vote in our local elections. There's already this just very complicated and disenfranchising political system that we have here, which, like you were saying, I am an anarchist. I do not believe in representational politics. I think it's a trap. I think it does not actually solve the issues that we have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it does have, some impacts here of, we can't pass our own laws. We're a city of 700,000 people who don't have ultimate control. And, a congressperson from Utah has more, say over what our laws here in DC are than we do. So when we're looking at, what are Trump's goals and motivations, I think he hates DC. DC is a very Black city. And as much as he says it's not beautiful, it really is, just in ways that don't fit his white supremacist metrics. It's a very Democratic city, to the extent that when they're tallying up the Electoral College votes for president with 0% reporting last year, they called DC for Harris. Like, they didn't even need to look, and just, we know how it's going to go here. So I think those are motivations. I think we put him in a bunker in 2020 and he's still upset about that. I think there's a lot of those things also at play. But I think what he wanted was authoritarian control over a city that he could then use federal forces to come and round up migrants. Because, we talked about the kind of impacts on our unhoused neighbors that very much fit in with his kind of beautify the city, make America beautiful again goals. But then there's also this other extremely racist anti-immigrant piece that is at the core of his politics and at the core of his basis politics. So what the main impact, what the sustained continuing, I think I've lost track of time. It feels like it's been years, but I guess we're 3 weeks in, maybe 4 at this point. The longest sustained ongoing violence that's happening in DC is against our migrant neighbors. And so as a sanctuary city, ICE couldn't just come in and take people. But now, I don't know the exact numbers, but just anecdotally, 10 plus people a day likely being kidnapped. So, he's very much accomplishing that. And I think that's his goal, right? Is a mass deportation. There's loopholes, there's political legal loopholes in DC that he could exploit in order to do it here. So yes, all these other things about DC, but I think that at the end of the day, he's here doing it because he can, because we don't have a governor, because we don't have kind of these other systems that state governance gives, at least now, purportedly some autonomy from the federal government. So it was just easier to do it here than it is Philly, Chicago. But he wants to do it there, right? It's if the legal loopholes or if the door is opened, right? So he was just saying about Chicago is, well, the governor of Illinois hasn't asked, so I don't know, right? That's why he's here. He didn't have to ask anyone. He used the assault on Big Balls by a few teenagers to justify what he's calling an emergency in order to activate these loopholes that let him do all of this. Does that answer your question?
I think so, yeah. And Big Balls being a contractor of Doge, right?
Yes.
I don't believe it's their legal name.
It's not. I refuse to remember his legal name.
Yeah.
But he's a contractor with Doge. I'm not sure exactly what department he's currently quote unquote working in. But yeah, he was assaulted by a few unarmed teenagers who, again, were immediately arrested, right? And so it was used as this justification for what he's doing now. He needed a catalyst to kind of declare the emergency.
Yeah. Yeah, but clearly he's going to use whatever catalyst he can employ, right? And I'm sure that Big Balls wasn't asking for it. So I think this has been super helpful. I think in understanding the like what's going on, I really appreciate this. You mentioned like Los Angeles, where they've already sent federal troops, where they're planning on, it sounds like there's threats of like redeploying. And he's also been, and you also mentioned this, talking about other cities like Baltimore, Chicago, Oakland, New York City, Philly, places that have large Democratic populations, also have large populations of people of color to be targets for the next sort of invasion like this. And so, yeah, maybe it makes sense to think that he is pulled back from one where he was getting blocked, and now he's like trying to develop tool sets that he might try to apply onto other cities. I think it's notable for us as people that would be resisting this sort of thing that we are also iterating through this and figuring out things that work to sort of resist. And while DC does have these differences of around representation, around governors, I wonder if you have any examples of like lessons over the last 3 or 4 weeks of methods of resisting that you've seen that are kind of interesting, that maybe might be helpful to folks that are in cities that are going to see the next round of this sort of occupation.
So as an anarchist and anti-fascist, I always have my belief within me that like no one is coming to save us. It's on us to take care of each other and to fight back against this. And so while there are maybe some politicians out there that are trying to block, what's happening, I mean, the way that our local government is responding is to talk about how we need more police. That, oh, yes, we do have a crime problem. We need more police. Our mayor is saying it. Our council people are saying it. And it's because they are politically in alignment with his goals of criminalizing people, of expanding the prison industrial complex, et cetera, and like using that as a tool to kind of maintain capitalism, maintain business interests, et cetera. That out of the way. People here are doing amazing things. So I've talked about how people are scared and it is terrifying, but we're also like really pissed off. And we're really pissed off at our local government too. And people are just mobilizing and doing the things that need to be done to keep each other safe. And so as I kind of think about resistance in this moment, there's kind of 3 main communities that are being targeted by police right now, federal, local, et cetera. And it's our unhoused neighbors, it's our young people, and our migrant community. And so across the city, there's amazing community defense projects that are happening to kind of support each of those groups of people that are really like at the most risk right now. So in supporting our young people, we were already dealing with a local government that was criminalizing our young people, our Black young people here in DC, by instituting a citywide youth curfew at 11 p.m. and establishing these like targeted youth curfew zones where the curfew started at 8 p.m. for people under 18. So that was already something that like youth organizers and people that support our youth in the city were pushing back against. But now, instead of just MPD at the metro station where a young person might be trying to get home from their friend's house, we have the National Guard, we have DEA, we have ATF, we have FBI, we have ICE, HSI, like you name it, they're there, and they are also apprehending our young people. So there's people have set up like metro station patrols to keep an eye, to advocate if like a young person is there. A big thing that we've heard is you can get exemptions to be out past the curfew, but they're often not respected by police when young people are being stopped. So people are setting up patrols and like metro station watches. So if someone is like a young person is being bothered by MPD, they'll go and help like advocate for them and say like, no, they've got this paperwork. Like you need to abide by the rule and let them go. And doing other kind of community defense projects like that. Folks have set up drop-in spaces for young people so they can have a third space that's safe away from the police. And one of the absolute most impactful things that has been done is know your rights trainings for young people. Like there are so many videos coming out around the city of asserting their rights, saying the lines that we learn, in know your rights trainings to kind of shut things down, move them along. And it's working. A lot of videos of people going through these know your rights trainings, and the next day they get approached when they're just trying to play basketball and am I free to go? Am I free to go? And the cops are giving up and leaving. So like really basic stuff is like really powerful and actually making a really big impact now. And then for our unhoused community, we're showing up at encampment evictions if they're happening as fast as we can. There's groups here in DC, Food Not Bombs, Ward 2 Mutual Aid, People for Fairness Coalition are getting people up in hotels if their camp has been cleared. We're really trying to pivot on supplies. People are having to be more mobile now. So we're trying to address that with getting them carts and, different kind of chairs that they can sleep in, because people are afraid to set up a tent. They think they'll just lose everything or get cleared immediately. We've also made kind of a Know Your Rights guide, because there's this demand that everyone go to shelter, and a lot of unhoused people in DC can't even tell you where a shelter is, much less get themselves there. And then the most kind of, I think, outstanding work that has happened has been around our migrant solidarity, and the way that everyone in the city is showing up to support that. Everyone. People unaffiliated with organizations are just going out and looking for cops and filming them, are filming arrests and sending it to, we're getting videos of it and, we're getting it along to people that can actually follow up and, find that person and support them. So, everyone in the city is on high alert and looking for one another. And we have a system in place with Migrant Solidarity Mutual Aid, who has a hotline. So we've already got robust networks of mutual aid work going on that people now are able to either send information to or tap into. And so, Migrant Solidarity's work has been just incredible. They run a hotline. They do rapid response for arrests. They're reporting online whenever a checkpoint, where we've had checkpoints every night pretty much from 6 to 8 p.m. at least one place in the city. So they're getting those, warnings up online. They're getting ICE sighting warnings up online. They're connecting families to legal support when their family member is detained. They're providing material support for those families. They're bringing them dinner. They're providing them emotional support. So, I guess that whole list of things is, there's so many ways to show up for people right now and keep them safe. And building those networks of support now before this happens, or finding them and supporting them now before it happens in your city, is going to make your ability to respond in the moment so much more impactful. Because, if we had to, as a city, start from the ground up with a hotline, in the middle of this, Migrant Solidarity, I think I saw the number today, they've received over 1,600 calls to their hotline and hundreds of texts in the 3 weeks since the occupation started. And in the 2 weeks before the occupation started, they'd only received 181 calls. So that's just a massively exponential growth in hotline calls and texts that they're trying to process and then match people to resources to support them. So that's kind of my biggest advice for everyone right now is there probably is mutual aid work already happening to support your migrant neighbors, support the young people in your city, support your unhoused folks. There are people already probably there doing the work, and you should go find them and support them and learn from them, and also, go get to work. Because this mutual aid work is always needed, but in a moment of crisis, it can be life-saving.
And just to note that we had hoped to have Migrant Solidarity Mutual Aid in this conversation, but they're so busy that they weren't able to participate.
Yeah, they're really swamped. I can't speak highly enough about the work that they're doing, and I don't know, I hope I did some justice in kind of representing what they're up to.
We can definitely put links to their social media and their website and such. And so if people can, feel like making a donation or
that would be great.
Getting in touch to learn some of the models that they're operating off of to be able to reproduce them where they're at, that would be super good.
Yeah.
I think that one of the lessons to take from this sort of thing, not being where you're at, not knowing the lessons that you've got, but with you talking about how one way to prepare for this is to start getting involved in mutual aid right now. I think one of the ways that this nightmare that is escalating and has always been more horrific for some people than it has been for other people, but it's this one encapsulating nightmare that all of us to some degree participate in and kind of hope to keep our heads down and just kind of do our thing and go home and play video games and then go back to work the next day. Like, I think that what we're seeing right now is like a ramped up version of the terror of living under capitalist, white supremacist, Christo-fascist America. And that point that you're making of like, go out, do mutual aid, get to know your neighbors. Whenever any of these occupations get stepped up like this, it seems like the strongest communities to respond are the ones that are harder to break into differing groups with competing interests, or just hoping that the like baton will hit next to them at that other community and not hit them. It's kind of a weird way of saying it, but you know, it rings back to the whole, like, they came for the Jews and I said nothing because I wasn't a Jew, like, or the communists, I guess, was the first one listed. But like, yeah, I think that that's like that was really well put by you. I really appreciate that. Besides Misma, which is a really cool name when you say it out loud, I'm like, okay, that's same in Spanish. Cool. Are there any other projects that you feel like shouting out that are doing good works that people might pay attention to, or maybe paying or offer some support to?
So the two, especially for supporting the young folks in DC, are Critical Exposure and Black Swan Academy. They've been doing Know Your Rights trainings with young people, which has just been, and they're the ones that are like hosting the drop-in space and like feeding people. They're doing really incredible work. And so for unhoused neighbor support, it's primarily us, FTP Mutual Aid, Food Not Bombs, Ward 2 Mutual Aid, and I can text you these. And then, yeah, really for the migrant support, Migrant Solidarity Mutual Aid is kind of the hub. There's other orgs that are kind of associated with and plugged into this broader network that is MISMA, but they're really the main ones that are currently doing that. But to just kind of like comment on what you just said, me and my partner were just talking the other day about how kind of the response in DC right now is like so smooth. There's no conflict. Like everyone is just putting down their head and getting to work, and also like supporting each other in all sorts of ways. Like, you know, we primarily do work with unhoused folks, but like we're also soliciting reports for ICE to try and take off some of the work from MISMA. And so then I can like direct, you know, through the noise if I see something that's like super urgent, right, that I get. Or, you know, we're going and volunteering at the Know Your Rights trainings, or, you know, like the young people are showing up and making demands to support our unhoused neighbors right now, right? So like everyone is showing up for everyone. And all of these kind of networks that have like largely, but not entirely, operated in their own kind of organizing bubbles are all leaning on and supporting one another right now, which I think, you know, and I told my partner, I was like, yeah, it's because the whole city is under attack. You know, it's not this kind of like isolated event, you know, of like big encampment eviction campaigns that we've dealt with before, that I kind of felt like you were having to like shake people to get them to understand how serious this is. You know, when the whole city is under attack and everyone is feeling it in their kind of corner of organizing work, like everyone is showing up, everyone is on high alert and making sure, you know, do you have enough people to spoon out the tacos at your Know Your Rights training? Do you have, you know, posters at your rally? Like all of that kind of stuff everyone is just like, I don't know, in lockstep right now. And it's building on a lot of work over years of, you know, actually, you know, learning hard lessons, learning how to make all of this work. But then also learning that like we do it best when we're all working in tandem has been like another, just this moment's really horrifying, but that aspect of it has been just like really hopeful for me of like, oh, right. Like when it hits the fan, we all have each other's back and we can keep each other safe through that.
Yeah, that's making me think a lot of like having this common enemy or common purpose among people. It creates beautiful alliances, and sometimes they dissipate when the terrain shifts or when the enemy moves on or whatever. But like to the way that people around here talk about the reaction, like initially and over the following like weeks and months to Hurricane Helene when it hit here, of just like, you know, would you normally go over to that church and like offer to help with like distributing food? Well, they kind of suck, but also they're doing this thing. What about the people down the street that like usually wouldn't get along with, or you've got a political faction deal, like competition with someone else down the road, the Progressive Democrats or whatever? Like everyone can hopefully put some of that stuff aside to get the important work done. And then maybe that'll build stronger connections and more trust for the harder fights moving forward.
Yeah, I think it opens doors for like conversations that maybe wouldn't, like we've been helping organize a community defense of a particular kind of food distribution program here in the city. So like, this is another thing is the like terror campaign is they're targeting churches, they're targeting like in soup kitchens, like they're targeting the places that they know people most desperately in need are going to be going to round them up and kidnap them. But we've been organizing a community defense for one of them because like this executive director of this nonprofit has no idea how to deal with ICE showing up at his door. So they called the anarchists and we were like, yeah, we've got you. We're going to organize some patrols and this is what we'll do. And this is how we're going to report and keep people safe and, what we'll do in an emergency. And he put in at one point in the chat, like, oh yeah, NPD showed up and they were super helpful. And we were all like, no, no, we did not show up here. So like we're going to keep supporting you, but this is like a learning opportunity for you to see like the people that are showing up to do this, like on the ground, we will confront the police if we need to work to keep, the people that your organization is serving safe. We're going to remind you that NPD is over at the Metro stop in Navy Yard terrorizing Black youth. So like it creates like very unusual alliances, like you were saying, that I do think open opportunities, hopefully, for people to kind of learn from a different perspective of like, okay, I can get it. Like you thought that NPD solved your problem right then, but hopefully I can help you understand the kind of broader picture of like the issue with policing is not, oh, I had one good interaction this one time, and that means all this other stuff is incorrect. But like, maybe listen to the gaggle of anarchists that have shown up to do on the ground community defense for your people when we say, try to like kind of check you a little bit on your like very quick praise of the Metropolitan Police Department, who are just, yeah. So it's been a very weird few weeks, but it's been a lot of interesting experiments that I hope some new relationships can come out of.
Well, Shannon, thanks a lot for the chat. Is there anything that I didn't ask about that you want to mention or discuss at this point?
Not that I can think of. Would just love if y'all could plug some of the groups that are here and just like reiterate the point that, we're two people and a dog. And, we put out a lot of information on social media and we've spoken to other media outlets, but like, it is not just us. There's a really huge network of people supporting one another right now and showing up for one another. And so I just want to, be sure to also, show some love and recognition to the other people like MISMA, which we've already talked about, but also Feed the People, Mutual Aid, FTP, and all the other groups in DC that are like, people are just working their asses off right now and then going to their full-time jobs to make sure that folks are safe. And we've got a marathon ahead of us, so as much support and love as people can send our way is appreciated.
I had reached out to Sima Lee, who has a show or has had a show on the Channel Zero Network, who's a hip hop artist who lived in DC for a long time, for the audience. Do you mind if I mention a couple of the groups that they had suggested reaching out to?
Oh, please do. I love Sima Lee, so any of their suggestions are most welcome.
They had mentioned the 411 Collective, PACA, PACA. Mm-hmm. And the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, DC, as well as the Peace House DC, and the DC Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression as projects that were worth following up with too.
Yeah, that's great. They're not folks we're connected to, but I have a ton of respect for the work that they do.
Well, thanks a lot. Where can people find out more about Remora House, follow you, support, all that stuff?
You can find us at Remora House DC on the app formerly known as Twitter for now, Instagram, and Blue Sky. That's the best way to find us and keep up with what we're up to. And if you want to throw us some dollars, you can find all those links also in our bios on there. Cool. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing and also for having this conversation, taking the time out of a busy day. I appreciate it. Of course. Thanks for having us. If you want to support The Final Straw Radio, you can subscribe to our podcast via various streaming platforms, follow, rate, and share our materials online, and learn more at tfsr.media.
And if you'd like to fund our transcription work that allows for easier translation, more accessibility of content, and the zines that we produce for each interview, consider picking up some merch from us or making a one-time or recurring donation via PayPal, Stripe, Venmo, or LibrePay, or joining our Patreon to access early release content and other goodies via the links that you can find at tfsr.media/support. Finally, if you'd like to hear us on your local radio station, visit tfsr.media/radio to find more info or reach out to us for some help. Thanks for listening. No borders, no nations. Stop the deportations. No nations, no borders. Chaos and disorders.
Hello, comrades. You are listening to the bad news of June from Parias of Athens. Today, we have people who participate in a research critique, a political group of research workers from DUA and other academic research centers. They will talk to us about an issue that monopolized the mass media in Greece in the past month. During the interview, we will explain in detail why it became so well known and what it means for subversive expression and political action within university spaces. Let's get started. First, you will tell me what happened.
Okay, so the news is the alleged violence from a student who was putting up a poster at a campus in Athens against the woman owning the canteen on the campus on May 5th. This constituted breaking news, leading to full-on deployment of the police forces, house break-in, 2 arrests of the student and a person of a friend of theirs.
His girlfriend. A very close friend of his.
Yes. And, that's about it.
Now you will tell me the time frame about legal issues and the state of the Polytechnic School.
Okay, the context behind this interest of the mass media on this case, on the dispute of between 2 individuals, is first of all the right-wing government and its long-standing educational restructuring plans, and a need to move the balance, move the agenda from the Tempe train crash, which resulted in 57 casualties, and the discovered cover-up that followed, the cover-up of the causes of the collision and the responsibilities of people in charge. So this issue puts a lot of pressure currently on the government, and they need to move the agenda to something else. And the lawlessness at the universities is usually a favorite subject. So as far as the restructuring at the universities is concerned, this particular government has already established police forces on the campuses. They have established the operation of private schools, private universities, and the turning of the current universities in R&D for corporations. So that's why anything that happens at the university gets exaggerated and makes the news.
A short comment on that is that there is an all-out attack by this far-right, corrupted Greek government to all levels of education in Greece, and especially in the tertiary education, that is the academia, there has been targeting in every aspect, like academically, union-wise, and in terms of social and political movement. I must underline now that regarding the police, like in 2 far or more years before, recently in any case, nobody could think that somebody with a police form would enter in any campus in any case, or almost any case. Now it is, as the comrade talked earlier, that happens all the time. So I want to underline this change because it is like the idea of how the academic system works, and for the academics, that the people who are in, and for the society in general. The perception of the academic asylum was strongly diffused among everyday life in Greece nowadays and was strongly established like 4 to 5 decades ago. So there is a fight to be given.
What is your analysis of what actually happened with some details?
Okay, so in this case we have a PhD student, in fact a researchers union member, who was putting up a poster at the canteen at the university campus and was physically attacked by the shop owner. And there are some things that should be said here. This particular canteen was squatted for 10 years prior to this shop owner operating it for profit. It was squatted by the students of the school in a self-organized way. The student that was putting up a poster, the poster was about academic freedom and events that were going to take place at the campus. And in the same context of the university, the National Technical University of Athens, the rector of DUA is a far-right enemy to anything related to squats or anarchist ideology, as is the government. So someone can imagine how things got out of hand on this one.
How did the mass media deceive the people and why?
It's a funny thing that the mass media said something in that like small everyday event. They firstly said that a man, maybe a student, hit a woman who was working in the university, at the Polytechnical School anyway. Secondly, at the same day, because it was like at the front page news from the very beginning, the event took place at noon. The news took place like 1 hour later. The news from the mass media, I mean. Secondly, and for a week time, they were using the CCTV videos from the establishment. I mean, the commercial canteen at the university, and they used the video the woman took from her cell phone because she was filming it from the very beginning till the very end of the incident. So the thing is that they don't like just putting play, and we all saw that video. They were cropping the video, they're putting noises on those videos. So they were trying to establish another view of those videos.
Yeah, and I want to add to that the first two journalists that covered the story mixed up who was the violent one. And when they realized that the shop owner was actually the aggressive person in this dispute, the other stations decided to crop her from the videos and demonstrate a different reality.
Just a small comment in order to think of the context. That what we describe is disinformation, but that disinformation occurred for a very not interesting event. The thing is why that happened so emphatically in the public mass media and for a long period of time. Because it's common in Greece. The mass media, the very most of them, maybe all of them in some ways, they're working on behalf of the far-right government and the capital. This is for sure. This can be established with examples from everyday life. And this is one of that.
Why and in what way do they use the word lawlessness?
Okay, so with the media demonstrating incidents like this as a case of lawlessness or anarchist violence in the universities, they have the grounds to impose totalitarian measures. For example, at the DUA campus, since then, a heavily armed special police force has been established there. Also, the squads at other campuses have been attacked, for example, at the law school, also in Athens. So the lawlessness is a very favorite go-to when some changes need to be done, let's say.
Another comment at this point is that, and if the old law doesn't suit us, we change the law because we are at that phase now. they rapidly changed several types of law regarding the universities, as we are commenting today, regarding the worker establishments, whatever. They might change the physics law.
Yeah, and maybe we should say that there is a need for people to fear what takes place at free spaces, or more free than the usual spaces that people hang out. So there is a need to be fear about what's going on at universities, and the voter needs to be convinced that police and attorneys must go in and put things to order and stop the chaos and the vandalisms and so on and so forth that take place there. So, yeah, I think that the lawlessness stands for that.
So there is an immediate repression against those who are acting outside the legal framework, but must be a requirement to be politically proactive towards liberation causes.
And at the end, what has happened since that day, and how does the case continue?
Okay, so since that day we have a promise from the government that there will be special prosecutors for students, and that any offense that takes place at a campus may be differently treated by law. For example, a student should lose their studentship upon arrest before any court takes place for 2 years, 2 whole years. And the prosecuted student was charged with battery, but in this particular case, the battery was upgraded as a charge so that they can be prosecuted by the state now. And him and his friend wait for court in June. Yeah, so we could say that since that incident, things have become even more suffocating regarding political freedom. However, I think people of struggle and solidarians are not willing to let this oppression be.
Now, can you tell me where we can find you, Research Critique members?
Hopefully everywhere, if there is a situation to people to be inspired in order to act and react. So be critiquing everywhere, in any case, in every land. But our small group will be founded in researchcritique.blogspot.com, I think. And it will be all Greek to you.
This is The Final Straw Radio. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions and suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net or thefinalstrawradio@protonmail.com. If you'd like to use any episode for your project or radio show, feel free to do so. Just send us an email to let us know. If you care to, you can send us letters at TFSR, P.O. Box 6004, Asheville, North Carolina, 28816. Programming support is brought to you by Firestorm Books. Located at 1022 Haywood Road in West Asheville, Firestorm is a bookstore and social movement space owned by its workers, in operation since 2008. Their event calendar and complete catalog of books can be found online at firestorm.coop.